Okay. Looks like we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to A Fistful of Dice. My name is Matt, and this is kind of a impromptu live Q&A that I'm doing here. I've really been missing making videos, and today I tried to film a couple of videos, and I wasn't really feeling it, and I decided that a good thing to do would be to do a little live stream, because then I just can plunder content from you guys and answer the questions that you want answered, instead of having to come up with video topics on my own. So I'm kind of easing back into regular video making here. I got a new lighting setup. You might notice that the lighting is a little bit better and that I'm moving a little bit smoother. I have a LED, it's basically a desk lamp, but it's an LED lamp behind my desk here, and I have it set up, and it's kind of cool. I have a little remote for the bulb. It's an LED bulb, and I can turn up and turn down the brightness. So that's really nice. I can change the color of it. There's red. You can't really see it, but green, blue, and then just regular, like warm, kind of yellow, white. So anyway, so that's really nice. I got that new lighting set up because I was realizing that my frame rate on my videos, especially like during Hangouts and live games and stuff, was like really choppy and low. And I realized it's because my lighting in this room is so different, and I'm constantly backlit instead of front lit. So my gain on my camera was like all the way up. And whenever you have the gain on the camera all the way up, it completely, it has to process the video completely differently. So it just slows down the frame rate. So anyway, all that to say, I got a new lighting setup, so you guys might notice that the video quality is a little bit better. Hopefully, ideally, that's the idea. But so thank you everyone for coming and hanging out with me on this afternoon. Should be a lot of fun. I'm just gonna hang out for an hour, 90 minutes, answer some questions, and if people enjoy this, I might make it kind of a semi-regular thing. So I've got the chat open here, and I see that a few people have already left some questions. So let's go ahead and just answer some questions here, okay? So the first question that we have in the chat comes from Craig Smith, and he asks, where do you start with prep for a new campaign, either module or homebrew? Cheers. So basically, how do you prep for a new campaign? Where do you even start if you're starting on a new campaign? For me, I like to keep it simple. I like to think about the big picture. I like to think about the important non-player characters. I like to think about sort of the important story arcs, the important locations that I might want to include. Basically, you know, the pillars of the campaign. What are the big aspects that I want to include in the campaign? And just sort of set those up. I talk a lot about when you're planning a campaign or when you're building a world, it's like setting up a board game that you don't really know how to play yet. Just put the board on the table and put the pieces where they go, and then sort of decide later on how they interact. You know, you're going to figure out later on what the pieces mean in relation to each other, how they interact, how they're connected, how the different sort of things play together. So put things on the board that you don't even know what they do yet, you know, and eventually it'll become easy, and the connections will become very evident. So, you know, for instance, in the new Provokers campaign, Provokers Bleak Wrath, there's the Clerisy, which is kind of this criminal faction that operates in the north of Aeronoth, and one of the new Provokers, Kristoff, is connected to them. And we knew that going in. We knew that he was going to be connected to the Clerisy. But then sort of as the campaign went on, you know, we're sort of realizing that there's some kind of weird, mysterious connections between the Clerisy and the High Elves of Haldrathine, which we're just now sort of learning about. And that's not a connection that I made starting out, but it's sort of one of those things where once you get to a certain point, it sort of makes sense to sort of start drawing these connections between the different factions, the different non-player characters, sort of depending on what they want, their motivations, and what they're aiming for. And if you see factions that could benefit from working together or working against one another, then you can kind of play with that a little bit. So yeah, when prepping a new campaign, just focus on the big things, focus on the pillars. You know, write up some notes either in a notebook or a Word doc. You keep yourself to a page or 2 pages, or grab some index cards and just fill out a few of those, and just think about the big things that you want to include. And then from there, take it one session at a time. Don't think too much about where do I want this campaign to end, or, you know, anything like that. So, and also make sure that you take into account the the backgrounds and the motivations of your player characters, you know, thinking about what they want and where they come from and things like that, and trying to work some of that stuff into it to make the campaign feel a little bit more personal. So, uh-oh, I'm losing questions now. Ooh. Oh, no. The chat went too far, so I lost a bunch of questions that people already asked. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't know that it would do that. I thought that the whole chat was just here in... That's a bummer. Okay. Oh, man, I'm losing questions by the minute. Okay, so I'm really sorry. There were some really good questions in there that I totally didn't get to. So if I don't answer your question, I apologize. Make sure you ask it again if you see it disappear in the chat, and hopefully I'll get to it, and I'll try to answer as many as I can. Okay, Doug Pudoff says, can anyone tell me about this weird D6 in the upper right-hand corner? The weird D6 in the upper right-hand corner. On my screen? I see you, D6s. I know where you are. Fergova asked, do you DM for children's groups? And if so, do you see children benefit from it? So I don't currently DM for children, but absolutely children benefit from Dungeons and Dragons and RPGs in general, because I'm living proof of that. A lot of my social skills and my ability to sort of think creatively and problem solve and just interact with people and things like that, like that's all D&D. I learned all of that from role-playing games and interacting with people at the table and things like that. So absolutely children benefit from tabletop role-playing games. And obviously there's a right way to go about it where, you know, depending on the kid and how mature they are and what sorts of things they're into, you know, you want to present things that hold their interest. So you might not run, you know, a dark fantasy campaign for your 7-year-old daughter, but she might really be interested in, you know, playing a campaign where she gets to befriend goblins or something, you know, whatever they happen to be into, you know, playing to those, just like you would with any D&D campaign. You want to present a campaign in a world that everyone enjoys playing in. So it might be you use a different system depending on how old they are, you know, or maybe you go rules light and you just have them just roll a die occasionally just to see, you know. So, but absolutely, yeah, kids definitely benefit from RPGs. So, lots of people here. Hey, everybody. Lee Rimmer asked, do you prep non-D&D games differently from D&D? You know, it depends, but yeah, sometimes I do prep a little differently depending on the system, because certain systems lend themselves to maybe a different type of game. A good example is like Call of Cthulhu, which I definitely prep Call of Cthulhu very differently than I would D&D. You know, D&D, I think about combat encounters, I think about role-play encounters, I think about puzzles and traps and things like that. And I sort of, you know, build the framework of the session around that. With Call of Cthulhu, I like to present mystery. And so what I do with Call of Cthulhu is I start at the end. I decide what is the solution to this mystery. What is exactly what happened, you know, at this murder scene or with this artifact that was stolen. And then from there, I work backwards and decide what sort of clues the player characters might find. And obviously I throw some red herrings in there, clues that aren't necessarily connected. And then I can kind of, you know, plan the mystery from there. So Call of Cthulhu, I prep backwards, whereas any other D&D session, I kind of prep forwards story-wise. So yeah, it depends. And like a Star Wars, like a Fantasy Flight games, I prep very differently because that's so contingent on improv and sort of rolling with the punches. And so I prep, you know, a Fantasy Flight games session a little bit differently than I would D&D as well. So Carlo Galbiati asks, do you have any advice for gaming with groups who have trouble paying attention and slowing down play? Yeah, so I mean I think that's an issue that a lot of game groups have, is like, you know, people not paying attention, you know, futzing around their phones, or, you know, if they have a character sheet on a laptop, you know, I've seen people, you know, on Facebook and stuff during gaming sessions. And obviously with like online play, you know, if you're playing on a Google Hangout, you know, you can't control what, you know, your players are doing on their other monitor or have up on their screen, you know. So what I would suggest is plenty of breaks, you know, plan for like 2 or 3 breaks in your, you know, typical 3 to 4 hour game session. They don't have to be lengthy breaks, but give your players, you know, 5-10 minutes here and there just to be able to get up, stretch, you know, check their phones if they need to, and making sure that there's actually built-in time And it's okay to be like, hey guys, like we're going to go for about another 20 minutes and then we're going to take a break, you know, just so everyone knows, oh, okay, I'm not going to get my phone out right now because I can do it, you know, uninterrupted in about 20 minutes. So just make sure that there's built-in breaks and that the players know where the breaks are. And honestly, like that'll probably help a lot. And then from there, just, you know, I don't really know what to do from there, but if people are still not paying attention or are bored, you know, it's worth it to have a conversation with your group about like, hey, are you guys having fun? And like, you know, is there something I can be including differently? Do you guys want more combat, less combat? You know, stuff like that. Communication is really key in a game group to make sure that everybody's, you know, having fun and enjoying themselves. Warmaker777 asks, what was the most out there campaign concept that turned out to be more fun than you thought it would be? I ran a spur of the moment Halo campaign and it turned out to be the best one I ever ran. So I think the weirdest campaign for me was probably, I ran this, it was like a mini campaign. It was about 5 sessions, I think. And it was set in this extraplanar city called Javar. And it was very similar to like Sigil, like in the Planescape setting, where it was like sort of this city that was like out of, you know, space and time. And the only way you could find it is if you weren't looking for it. It was sort of a paradoxical thing. So there was this kind of cool plot line where some of the characters from a previous campaign sort of got lost, you know, planar traveling and ended up in this extra dimensional city called Javar. And everyone ended up playing like crazy characters. Like it was just an excuse for everyone to play like angels and Rakshasa and just crazy things like that. And it ended up being a really, really fun campaign and really rewarding. And I pulled off one of the biggest like betrayals ever with a non-player character. And it was one of those, like it didn't feel hackneyed or contrived. And when it happened, everyone reacted like the way I wanted them to. They were like shocked and sad. And then they were like, let's get him, you know? So yeah, my Javar campaign was, I love that campaign. That was a lot of fun. I have really good memories playing that campaign. Rob from Performance Check is here. He asks, question, what is the most memorable battle you've both GM'd and played? So the most memorable battle I've GM'd, probably a tie between the elevator fight in the first Provokers campaign, the elevator fight in Stone Rift, and the final fight with the Corruptor in the original Provokers campaign. I felt like those two were like two combats that just felt epic while I was running them. And it was just because I made sure that the environment was part of the combat. You know what I mean? Like you weren't just fighting against enemies, you were fighting against the environment or you know, there's some sort of countdown happening, things like that. So, and then most memorable battle that I've played. Oh, this is a tough one. Oh man, I'm not sure. There's a few that are sort of sticking out to me. Let me think. Most memorable combat that I've played. The vampire spawn fight in the Winds of Cerceline was really cool. The mimic fight in Winds of Cerceline was really cool too. I really enjoyed my one-on-one duel with what was his name? Clancy in the Dragonguard campaign. That was awesome because there was a lot of character and a lot of sort of personal sort of goals or personal sort of strife there. So that was kind of cool. Yeah. It's not because I haven't played enough good combats. It's because there's so many in my head that immediately spring to mind that it's tough to narrow it down. Let's see here. Oh, Doug Pudoff said, can anyone tell me about those weird D6s in the upper right-hand corner of that photo before the video started? Never seen them before. Oh, you're probably referring to my Knucklebone D6s, these guys right here. These are, if you just do a search for Knucklebone dice, they'll probably come up. They're just regular D6s. They're not actual bone, but they're made to look like bone. These are my character rolling dice. So I've got 4 of them here in my little wormwood dice case that I use for generating ability scores for characters. That's probably what he's referring to. Let's see here. Iron Iron T. Mestent asks, what do you do when players launch themselves in a quest but find part of the quest boring? So if your players are bored and are visibly bored or are acting bored, first of all, you need to determine if your players are actually bored or if you're just projecting on them and you're afraid that they're bored. Because one of the biggest things as a dungeon master is worrying about what your players are doing and if they're having fun and things like that. So first, determine if they are bored. Ask them if they're having fun. And if it's not something that you're comfortable, if it's not a conversation that you're comfortable having at the table, then maybe message them between sessions or sit down with one of them and just be like, hey, are you having fun in the campaign? Like, is there anything that is, okay, so here's the thing. You never want to go into a conversation with, is there anything I could be doing better? Because you never want to set yourself up for, a player telling you, well, you need to do this better or this better. Ask them, what would you like to see in the campaign? Make it about them and what they want out of the campaign. Instead of saying, what could I be doing? Just ask, what do you want to see in the campaign? Do you want to see more combat, less combat? Do you want to fight a particular monster? Do you want to try to find a particular magic item? What are your character's goals? Do you want to try to own a tavern? Things like that. Making sure that your players just aren't on autopilot going down whatever quest you put in front of them. Make sure that they feel invested and that their characters feel invested. And it might be one of those things where they've never thought about what their character wants. And you asking them makes them think, oh, yeah, I guess that's why I'm bored, because I don't feel like my character's going anywhere. I just feel like I'm going from challenge to challenge with no progression or no, ultimate goal there. So make sure that you ask your player what they want out of the campaign, specifically tied to their character's background. And I think that you'll see, a little bit less boredom happening there. Okay. Nicholas Wickland said, questions shouldn't be disappearing. Try having it set to pop out chat. Yep, I have it set to pop out chat, but I am losing the chat. I'm losing the top of the chat constantly. It's kind of weird, actually. I've never had that before. Yeah, that's really weird. Like the top, I get, oh no, now they're back. Whoa, weird. Okay, I might loop back around and answer some more of the questions. Okay, that's so weird. I had the chat popped out, and I could only scroll so far up. And then I minimized the chat, and then made it full screen again, and the chat came back. So I have no idea what's happening. But so that's good. I can go back and read those questions. So let's see where I am here now. Performance check. Oh, I already answered that one. Awesome. Thank you, Rob. In Initiative asks, I used to DM for children and they had a lot of fun and learned to socialize and think together to solve a problem instead of doing it themselves. Exactly. Yeah. What you're looking at is here, he says, unless your daughter is the girl from The Ring, then dark fantasy might be right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it really depends on, what the kids that you're playing with, what they're into. If they're into kind of, dark fantasy stuff, then obviously go for it. So Rockstar 212121, because Rockstar 212120 was already taken, says, any tips for someone who's still trying to learn the game but is going to DM a game with their friends? So my biggest tip, and I will go on like a broken record about this, is keep it simple. Like, as much as you can, try and keep it simple. You never want to go into a campaign, especially starting out with all of these ideas and all the notes and notes and notes and pages and pages and pages of prep, because you would think, as a beginner, you would typically think, well, the more prep I have in front of me, the easier the game is going to be. No, not at all. I hardly ever look at my prep notes actually during a game. Most of the time, my prep notes are there for me to just glance at, sort of in breaks or in between things, or while the players are interacting, I might glance down at my prep notes just to make sure that I'm not forgetting anything that I wanted to include in the game. If I have pages and pages and pages of prep notes, you know what I'm going to be doing during the game? Shuffling through those and freaking out because I can't find what I'm looking for. And like, I knew I wrote this down. Where is it? Just keep it as simple as possible. Try to keep your prep notes to a page, a page and a half at the most, so that you can really easily look and glance down and know what you're looking at. Try and think of it as like if you're in a band, if you're in a cover band, you don't want the sheet music of the songs in front of you, because you don't want to sit there and be following the sheet music. You want like the key of the song or the note that it starts on, the chord that it starts on, just written there. So then it's like, oh yeah, okay, I remember this, and now I remember what I'm doing. And occasionally I'll glance and be like, yep, still, I'm doing good. So just keep it as simple as possible. Would be my biggest piece of advice. Charlie Wake asks, when planning a long campaign like the Provokers, how much of the story do you plan in advance, and how much do you write as you go along? And how do you avoid railroading your players? So this is a really good question. So when planning a long campaign, like I mentioned in an earlier question, keeping it simple, focusing on the big things of the campaign that I want to cover, the big aspects. It might even be a list of adjectives or noun, or I think for I don't have my DM notebook handy. It's somewhere around here. But for the Provokers Bleak Wrath, I think that there were like 3 things that I had written. It was like discovery. I can't remember what the other ones were. But anyway, I had some, I want the campaign to be about this, this, and this. And again, I put those big pieces on the board without really knowing what necessarily they do, how they factor in, how they interact with each other. And then I just take it one session at a time. And I think about the logical sort of progression of those things. So it's like, with the Provokers, it's like, okay, I want to include this criminal faction called the Clerisy. I'm going to mention them a few times. I'm going to mention them just kind of offhand in a few sessions. Maybe someone mentioned, the Clerisy's moving into Falhash, or we've had issues with the Clerisy lately, or, Christoph's character being connected to the Clerisy. So then in session 4, when a guy wearing a Clerisy uniform comes walking around the corner, everyone's like, oh, I know who that is. That's Clerisy. We same outfit Christoph's wearing. They've been mentioned a few times. So it just made sense to have the Clerisy walk up, then and actually enter the campaign as a player. It's going to be very similar with session 5, where there's a big thing that I'm going to include in this campaign, and it's something that I'm excited about. And it would have been really easy to just shove it into session 1 or 2. But instead, I've been building up to it. And so in session 5, we're going to see the sort of culmination of that. And that's sort of how I like to do it, is just every few sessions, I look at my big picture document, which is just a page with some things written on it, cool things that I want to include in the campaign. And I think, yeah, it's time to bring this in now, or it's time to connect these 2 pieces, or it's time to focus on this character's backstory or personal goal, things like that. Sam Schuler says, I fried my brain completely improvising 4 hours of D&D when half my party didn't show up. Did you have any short adventures that can be done by 2 players? I don't have any sort of like recommendations for modules or anything like that for a one-on-one game or a small party game. But I would just say, when you have 1 or 2 players sitting at your table rather than the typical 3, 4, 5 that you want in a session, just scale everything down a little bit, run a fun game, and just not worry too much about tailoring it specifically for the number of players. And it's also a good chance for if a bunch of your your game group cancels on you, and you have 4 hours of time blocked off for D&D. Maybe try something different, run a different system, run an impromptu game, pull one of the adventure modules off your shelf that you've been meaning to give a try, things like that. That's actually what we're trying to do with the adventure kits over at Absolute Tabletop. We're going to be kickstarting our first adventure kit here soon. Is like the adventure kits are designed for situations like that, where you need something really quickly. Half your party canceled, but 2 people are still showing up. You go, oh, I'm going to pull one of my adventure kits off the shelf, and I'm going to pick a few fun encounters, a puzzle, an NPC, and I'm going to build a really quick adventure in like 10 minutes and run it for him. So things like that are really helpful, but use it as an excuse to kind of run something that you wouldn't normally run, would be my advice. Nash Smith, how do you prep puzzles for your games? Oh, man. Puzzles are tough. And I love puzzles, but they're so hard to prep. And you can't really improvise a puzzle, right? So the best advice I can give you with a puzzle is try to think of a way where it's almost like the puzzle seems really difficult at first, but then when the players get it, they feel really smart. So think of a way where you can have pieces of the puzzle happen throughout. Let's say you're in a dungeon, and in one room, the players find this weird stone like tail, and they're like, what the hell is this? I don't know. And they, take it with them, or they leave it there. And then in another room, a little bit farther down, they find this weird like claw. They're like, huh, kind of looks like the tail. It's like the same sort of style. let's take it with us just in case. And then later on in the dungeon, they see, you know, this dragon sort of statue, and it's missing its tail and its claw and its horn. So they have the tail and the claw, and they put them on, and they're like, oh, and the horn's missing too. Where is it? The boss has it. He's got it on his helmet. So then they have to kill the boss, grab the horn, and put it on the dragon. Doors open up or something happens. I don't know. And that's not like a puzzle and then like a riddle or a really brain teaser. It's just something that you can include that kind of like keeps the players guessing. And it's also something that feels really cool when they figure it out, because it's like, oh, yeah, we just need those 3 pieces. So I'll go back and grab the tail. We got the claw right here. We just need to go get the horn, and then boom, the dragon statue is done. And it's a cool way to kind of reward them and, you know, have a sort of cohesive sort of feel throughout the dungeon as well, because, you know, the pieces are sort of scattered throughout. So also look at video games. Look at like Zelda dungeons. Always have really fun, kind of simple puzzles that still make you think. And it's all about, you know, putting something in the right place, choosing the right color. Just think about the simple sort of puzzle brain teaser things. You know, they don't need to be mind-melting puzzles. I'm also a big fan of skill challenges, which are a little bit different than puzzles, but they're one of those things where they require the party to work together and potentially do a bunch of different skill challenges using their different abilities. So actually in Stone Rift, the book that I wrote with Absolute Tabletop, there's a generator in there for making these things called sentinel gates, which are these doors that are sort of sentient and self-aware, and they require a bunch of different checks in order to open. And that's really cool. There's like a roll table for generating a bunch of different sort of puzzles, skill challenges for your players to contend with. So maybe take a look at that as well. Here's a great question from Awesome Personified. What helps you get through DM burnout? And I'm gonna start skipping around here, guys, for the questions, because I'm way behind on the chat here. Awesome Personified asks, what helps you through DM burnout? Let me take a drink. So for me, DM burnout is a very real thing, and I find myself experiencing DM burnout probably 2 or 3 times a year, normally if I'm running games regularly. And I find that the best thing to do is take a break. You know, don't quit the hobby and sell your books or whatever, but just take a break. Take a few weeks, take a month. Try your best to not think about the particular campaign or the particular game that has you, you know, burned out, and maybe focus on something else. You know, do something else with your creative energy, or just zone out and play a video game. You know, for me, DM burnout is prime time for absorbing ideas and getting inspired, watching movies and TV shows, reading comic books and novels, listening to different music, you know, watching other games, watching other people run games on YouTube, and, you know, watching things like Critical Role and Acquisitions Incorporated. Things like that give me ideas, and they get me excited again for running games. So don't fight against DM burnout. Don't try and force it. If you feel burned out and like you don't want to run a game, don't run a game. You know, just take a few weeks off, and you'll absolutely feel better. All right, let me skip ahead here. Lots of different questions. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. We got a really good turnout for in the middle of the day. Let's see here. Okay. Zerosius asks, hey, Matt, I will run a session next week where there will be an assassination of a noble. How do I make it so the party can't save him with healing magic without making them feel useless? Okay, so this is a thing that I've had issues with in the past too, where you want a non-player character to die, but there are things like healing magic, and you don't want to be that guy that's like, he got stabbed with a magic dagger that prevents healing or whatever. So the way that I can do it, you can do it, is either he's past it, you know, he's past healing magic. That happens to player characters. If you take enough damage to die outright, there's no healing magic that will bring you back. You got to use a resurrection spell, right? So that's one thing. But the other thing too is maybe they do save him. Like maybe they get to him in time and they save him, and the noble is alive, but he's injured and he's wondering, why did they try to assassinate me? You can still have the same amount of sort of, you know, pursuing the assassin, figuring out why, even if the nobleman is still alive. So think to yourself like, well, don't say when this happens, the PCs will do this. Say, I'm going to have this happen and have the PCs react. So assassination attempt. Boom. I'm gonna have an assassin attempt to assassinate this noble. Whether or not he succeeds, it's going to be up to the players, and then from there, I can take it in the direction I want to. And ultimately, the only difference is, well, now they're able to talk to the noble. Or maybe not. Maybe he's in a coma because he got stabbed in the liver. I don't know. So just, play around with that and think about, is it actually a requirement that the noble is dead for my idea to work? And if so, maybe my idea is a little bit too stringent, and maybe I should open it up and allow for a little bit more flexibility and leeway there. Let's see here. Jonathan M., for a Conan-inspired 5th edition D&D game, what is the one thing you think needs to show up? Thanks for doing the Q&A and all the RPG stuff you do, man. Absolutely, and thank you for stopping by, Jonathan. So for a Conan-inspired D&D game, you need, let's see, what are the staples of Conan? And more specifically, what are the staples of sword and sorcery? Think about, so the biggest difference between high fantasy, a high fantasy like a Lord of the Rings, and a low fantasy or a sword and sorcery like Conan, is thinking about personal. It has to be personal. It has to be about survival. It has to be about revenge. It has to be about the character's goals and not some lofty saving the world sort of thing. So imagine if, in Conan, he was trying to stop like the world from ending and destroy this magical artifact to prevent a Dark Lord from rising. That doesn't really happen in Conan. Conan is all about like, I'm the last surviving member of this battle and I have to like find my way out of here or whatever. It's like, think about survival and personal sort of motivations rather than these like high fantasy sort of overarching plots where, they're vanquishing evil and things like that, saving the world. Think about small, like localized sort of problems that the characters can deal with. Make it very low fantasy, I think, is a big thing in Conan and sword and sorcery in general. Let's see here. I'm looking for people that I haven't answered questions yet. Man, lots of questions. Thank you, guys. I will answer as many as I can. I'm definitely not going to get to all of them, but this is awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see here. Any advice on how to organize a game for beginners as a veteran player? Should I guide them more or make them understand they can do anything? So for me, actually, there's a beginner game that I ran on my channel. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called... Oh, it's called The Undercrawl, and it's just a very simple dungeon delve with some new players who are very inexperienced in D&D. Either they've never played before or they played very seldom. So what I like to do with the beginner game is I include a little bit of everything. I include a combat, I include a role-play encounter, and I include some sort of exploration, a trap, a puzzle, something like that. Take a look at my 5-room dungeon. I think the title of the video is How to Build Better Dungeons or How to Build a Dungeon. Easy dungeon, something like that. There's a video on my channel where I talk about the 5-room dungeon model. It's perfect for beginner players because it's like everything that is included in D&D. You got your role-play encounter, you got your you got your puzzle, you got your boss fight, you got your combat, things like that. Make sure that you just sort of guide them through, something like a dungeon that is not as open-ended where they can go and do anything. Because if you hit a group of new players with, okay, you guys are in a town, it's raining. There's an inn across the street. What do you do? It's like, that's decision paralysis. They're like, I don't know. What do you do in this game? Can I go buy a farm and raise a family? And you're like, I guess, and then you spend the entire campaign doing that. No, like put them in a situation where you can guide them a little bit, hold their hands a little bit, but still have the illusion of choice. Your all DM Lloyd, he talks about that all the time, the illusion of choice, where it's kind of on rails, but you sort of make it seem like it's not on rails. So they can go left or right, but ultimately, what's going to happen, left or right. So think about that kind of stuff and just make sure that you're flexible in the way that you handle the rules and the way that you allow them to do things. Use your improv language, yes and, no but, things like that. Making sure that if they come at you with something that is creative, that is, thoughtful, let them do it. I want to use my torch to, try and throw and light that lantern, or I want to try and cut the chandelier so it drops on the bad guy, or I want to try and scale this wall so I can shoot down on them. Just let them do cool stuff. Let them get a feel for the rules. Make them roll a lot. and just make it fun. Make their characters feel awesome. And yeah, definitely guide them a little bit more than you would, a normal D&D group who kind of knows the drill and knows how you operate. Tyler Stratton, I've considered injecting romance into my games. How would you handle romantic relationships in a campaign? Has it happened in any games you've run or played in? No, honestly, I've never really done that. And that's something that is not, it's not that I'm uncomfortable with it. It's that those aren't the stories that I like to tell. So the most romance you'll see in a campaign of mine is like, Dice and his late wife, and their interactions in various visions and flashbacks and things like that. Obviously those are two characters that love each other, but it's not like I have characters in the same party, getting involved, or, an NPC and a character getting involved. It's something that is not, those aren't the stories I like to tell. And so I don't involve them in my campaigns, but it's one of those things where if it happened naturally, if it happened organically, it's something that I would like to play around with. And obviously I wouldn't make it a focus of the campaign, but I could see it being interesting and fun. So unfortunately, I don't have any hard advice for you on that, but I would just say, do it with a steady hand, keep it balanced, keep it, have some levity to it where it doesn't feel like it's overwhelming the campaign. But obviously, love and romance and people that care about each other, that's a very strong motivation. That's a very strong draw. So it's something that you can kind of utilize as a dungeon master very well, I think. Warmaker777, what NPC have you made that you adore the most? And whenever you get a chance, you throw into a game just for the players to interact with them. So I don't really have an NPC that exists across like games or campaign settings, but I have to say that probably my favorite NPC is probably Keenra, obviously. I love Keenra. He was kind of a throwaway NPC that I just included in the Provokers because I wanted to mess around with Dragonborn and in Aeronoth, and he turned into a character that everyone sort of latched onto, and I really enjoy playing, and I'm really enjoying learning more about him in Provokers Bleak Wrath. And if you watched the most recent session of Bleak Wrath, I think it was session 4, you learned a little bit about Keenra's past and where he comes from and how he got the scar on his eye and stuff. So I'm looking forward to exploring more of that. Oh man, here we go. Thomas Carpenter. Mind telling us about your other homebrew settings, others you've had, new ones you're working on, etc.? Yeah, sure. I can talk about a couple. I mean, you guys all know about Aeronoth. And I'm assuming most of you are familiar with Kror because I've run a couple games in Kror, which is kind of my sword and sorcery, like low fantasy sort of setting. But other things that I've worked on, other homebrew settings, I have a setting called Wild Spark that I'm kind of toying with, and that's sort of an idea that my wife and I had together where it's this very overrun with nature sort of campaign, very inspired by like Zendikar from Magic the Gathering, where the basic idea is that the world at one point sort of fractured into all of these islands, but this giant tree held them all together. So imagine the world tree, if you've ever seen the world tree, where it's a double-sided tree where it has, the canopy up top and the roots down below. And the branches and the roots of this tree are holding all of these islands together. So you can travel across the branches and the roots to get to the different islands, these different land masses, and everything's overrun with forest. And the idea is that it's always daylight on one half on the top side, and it's always nighttime on the bottom half, down below. And there's, the races are different. So, you have elves up above and drow down below. And every sort of race would have a daylight and a nighttime sort of counterpart. Playing around with very like nature-y sort of pagan ideas and druids, things like that. Kind of toying around with that, having fun, just kind of conceptualizing that. I haven't run anything in it yet, but kind of just a neat idea that I've had. I've wanted to run a very like nature-centric, like foresty setting for a while, so I think that'd be kind of cool. Other ones that I've toyed around with, there was one that I have that I've run a couple sessions in called the Flintlock Dominion, which is it's like very Warhammer fantasy, where humanity is sort of top dog, and it's because they have guns. And so the idea being that there's this like this empire of humanity, a flintlock dominion, and they have dirigibles and guns, and they wiped out monsters, and all the monsters have to live like elsewhere, like, you know, out in the wastelands, while humanity just sort of thrives in this empire. But they also war with each other because there's different lords and things like that. And the elves too, like, I imagine that the elves helped the humans like drive out all the monsters, and then the humans were like, "You're next, elves," and they like drove the elves into the forests, and so now all the elves are like feral, like wild, because they've been, you know, driven out of the land and like forced to live in the wilds and sort of, you know, revert to their fey state in order to survive. So that's kind of a fun thing that I've been toying around with. I'm not sure if anything will ever come in that, but it's just kind of a fun, like, I wanted to do D&D with guns, and so I made a setting where guns were like a big deal, and there's a reason why they're so good. It's because, you know, humanity, you know, used it to wipe everybody out. And I like the idea of like armored footmen who have like these big shields that they stick in the ground, and then they use the shields as mobile cover, and they have these rifles, and they like, you know, there's like a specific slot where you slot in the rifle over the shield. And I ran a combat with these guys, and they were gnarly because they would just walk up and they would like put their shields in the ground, boom, half cover with the rifle. Like, oh, it was awesome. Really fun. So I might toy around with that a little bit more too, but I have like at all times 5 or 6 settings happening up here. And right now I'm in super Harbinger mode. So Harbinger is the thing that I'm thinking about almost constantly. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because the chat's getting ahead of me. And I'm just going to start looking for questions near the top. Rob Kears asks, Matt, one of my players is purely a fighter and not very social. My Pathfinder game is very heavy on RP. How could I involve him more? I already gave him some thieves' tools and knowledge books. So, okay, so here's the problem. Class shouldn't matter with role-playing. Like, you can play a fighter who's like role-plays. Like, that's part of, you know, the game is role-playing. So instead of giving him more mechanical stuff, think about his background. Think about where he's from. Think about what's important to him. Is there a specific weapon that he really loves? What was his relationship with his parents like? Does he have family? Does he have friends? Does he have a wife? Does he have kids? Does he want kids? Think about what the character wants, and then give them a way to potentially get it if they try hard enough. So let's say that this fighter, he's looking for a specific ancestral blade of his family. It's very important to him that he finds it. It's been lost for generations. It was his father's wish that he find the sword, but his father died several years ago, and it was his last will and testament. His father, with his dying breath, he grabbed his son and brought him close and said, "Find the sword." And so now that's his whole deal. He's just trying to find the sword. So give him something to care about. And if he can't come up with something that his character cares about, make him care about something. Take something away from him. And not in a malicious way, but maybe he loses his favorite weapon. Maybe his village gets burned down, and now he wants to kill the bad guy who burned down his village. So just think about ways to make the player, and specifically the character, care. And giving him more mechanical stuff to do isn't going to fix that. It's just going to give him more mechanical stuff to do. Let's see here. Here, John Schwartz, can we expect to see anything from the Iron Lords of Zakesh? Also, what about them Provoker Legacy sessions? So Iron Lords of Zakesh, absolutely, I want to run more. My wife is currently in school for a massage. She's getting licensed as a massage therapist. So she's going to school with that. So we haven't had a ton of time to play together lately. And obviously with moving again and me, you know, I'm starting, you know, new job situation, working from home and stuff. So it's been a little crazy hectic. We haven't had a chance to play together in some time, but absolutely Iron Lords of Zakesh will happen again. Just not sure when at the moment. And also he asked about the Provokers Legacy sessions. Yes, the next one is going to be Erdon's. So this is totally on me. I've tried to schedule it with Nate several times, and I keep having to push it back. So Nate, bless his heart, he's like ready to go, raring to go, and I keep having to push the game back. So, but Erdon's session is going to be next, and then we're going to do Durgan's, which Durgan's will be kind of the most connected to the Bleakwrath, I think. It'll have the most to do with Bleakwrath. All right, let's see here. so many questions. You guys are awesome. Nicholas Wickland asks, advice on making money more important when taxes/daily life expenditures, strongholds, and boats are uninteresting to both GMs and players. That's tough because, especially with 5th edition, you can't necessarily buy magic items anymore, right? So gold becomes less valuable, especially if your players aren't into buying land or strongholds or boats or mounts or whatever. So how to make money more important? I would say maybe give them a way to buy potions or cool one-off things. Something that I love about the system Numenera are the ciphers. And ciphers are like, they're like one-off magic items that you can use one time and then you lose them, right? So maybe think about not necessarily magic items, but just a way for your players to buy something that would benefit them like one time, and then they lose them. So maybe it's like 50 or 100 gold in order to get one of these things, and then once they use them, they can't use them again. So like one-off magic items. So look at Numenera, the cipher system, things like that, and use those. UPS guy is here. Let's see here. Okay, 1 second, guys. Okay, I'm back. All right. So yeah, sorry, the UPS guy was here. Yes, look at ciphers and Numenera. They're really fun one-off magic items. Maybe find a way for your players to buy things that are sort of similar to that. And if you're looking for a way to easily make them, look at spells in D&D 5th edition and create little magic items that maybe can do those spells or something similar to those spells one time and allow your players to buy that. You could even create like a fun, eccentric NPC that sells these things, and they can go and see him and he has, oh, I got the new one this time, that sort of thing. Charlie Wake, what are some cool, unique ways to bring the party together in the first session? Crucify them. That's my go-to answer ever since playing in Tim's Dragongrin campaign. Crucify them. Put them in a situation that they have to work together right away. Start it with a combat. Start it on a ship that's sinking or a plane that's crashing. Put them in a situation where they have no choice but to work together to survive. And guaranteed they're going to make some bonds really, really quickly. Just crucify them. All right, let's see here. Perone 17. I'd like advice on how to make combat more challenging. Every time I try to throw something hard at my players, they come up with a clever way to get around it without taking much damage. Sounds like you got a good group of players. They're being clever and strategizing. To make combat more challenging, don't look in your monster manual. Look elsewhere. Don't just add more monsters or tougher monsters. Think about ways that you can include the environment. Think about ways that you can include some sort of countdown timer or puzzle that they have to solve while they're fighting. Instead of just putting them in a circular room and having them fight whatever you put in front of them, have the room be slowly filling up with water. Have the ceiling be crumbling. Have some sort of thing that they need to do, like they need to turn 3 dials in order to open the door and get to the other side while they're fighting. Try to think of other elements that you can include in the combat in order to make it more challenging. Because if you're just throwing more beanbag chairs at your players, they're just going to keep stabbing them until they win. And it sounds like you have a clever bunch of players if they're strategizing and finding ways to get around combat. So you can feel comfortable hitting them with a few, different environmental effects and things like that. Let's see what else we got here. Treon Drummers, how do you run a one-on-one session, scaling encounters and creating NPCs to help the player? So definitely check out my campaign, Iron Lords of Zakesh, which is the one-on-one campaign that I run with my wife. And you'll see that I usually keep the encounters very simple. And I also give her some very simple NPC stat blocks of followers that she can bring with her to do different encounters and things like that. So that's one way to do it, is just like Keep it really simple, and maybe include some NPCs in the party that they can take with them. I actually wrote an article about one-on-one sessions for EN World, their insider magazine. You can search for it on Drive-Thru RPG. It's called Party of Two. No, it's called Party of One. Party of One is an article I wrote about running one-on-one sessions. You can go check it out if you want to learn more about it, but also just go watch Iron Lords of Zakesh. We did a session 0 about, making the world and planning the campaign and stuff. Batman official. Oh geez, I just lost it. Not too much of a DM style question, but I accidentally had everyone make their characters on 4E sheets, but I plan on running 5E. Will I have to redo the character making process with them? Probably. So you said you use 4E sheets, but did you use 4th edition character creation rules, or did you create them using 5th edition? Because 4th edition characters are not compatible with 5th edition. They're completely different systems. So just for sake of clarity and ease, you should probably make the characters using 5th edition and 5th edition sheets, because you're going to constantly be running into issues where their players can't find what you're talking about because it's a completely different system. Thomas Tibbetts, how would you deal with a player who can't seem to keep their mouth shut? I have a rogue who requested perception check repeatedly while the druid is in the middle of RPing his death. Tell him to shut up. Honestly, like, with a player like that who is very oblivious to the fact that they're being irritating or disruptive, it's up to you as the dungeon master to talk to that player. And I'm not saying you call them out at the table necessarily, but message them in between sessions or talk to them one-on-one in between sessions and just say like, hey, I appreciate that you're enjoying the game and that you're wanting to do all these things with your character, but you got to share the spotlight, man. Tim Carney from Tabletop Terrors always says that everyone at the table has a spotlight, and you can either shine it on yourself or you can shine it on other people. And you should try to, as much as you can, shine it on other people. Set people up to, dunk the ball, do the layup, man. Put the ball up there so they can drop it in the hoop, and they'll do the same in kind for you. So I would just talk to the player and make sure that they might not even be aware that they're kind of being a jerk. So it's not worth it to sit there and stew about it if you haven't brought it to their attention. And those sorts of conversations can be awkward, but if you just come at from a positive place and, be kind to them and just sort of say, hey, I'm just talking to you, making sure that, everyone is enjoying the game, including you, is a good way to go about it. Tanareem asks, hello, are your glasses real? Yeah, they're real. I don't have fake glasses on. If yes, how much? I can't remember because I had optical insurance at the time, so they were quite a bit cheaper than they normally would have been. Michael McLeod, what is your opinion on rotating DMs for each session? Is there a way to make that work better, or is it even worth it? I've never done that before. I've done rotating campaigns where everyone at the table takes turns running short campaigns, but every other session having a different DM, I think that could be fun depending on the campaign, but I also imagine that it might come off as a little bit disjointed. So try it out, man. See how it works and let me know, because I have no idea. Have you ever played with or DM'd a game in the GURPS system? No, I haven't. And I'm not super interested in GURPS. GURPS doesn't really appeal to me. Josh Floyd, you mentioned those poker chips for players who play well. How many do you hand out per session? So the poker chips being essentially inspiration. It depends. I try to hand out, each player should be getting at least a couple, maybe 1, 2, 3 if they really knock it out of the park. And I try to hand them out evenly. I don't try to just give them to one person. So that is, the same sort of rule for inspiration as well. Try and spread the love a little bit if you can. Let's see here. Alessandro Spaciani. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't think I am. I wanted to run a one-on-one play-by-post game for a friend on Discord, but he's probably going to be a PC mage or thief. I'm having difficulty thinking of encounters of a level 1 guy that is alone. Suggestions? Give him some NPCs, man. Give him some people that can help him out. Or just think about creating encounters that are tailored to a mage or a thief, people he can sneak up on. Maybe you want to do espionage missions where he can, attempt to quiet people and assassinate them like Metal Gear Solid style. Or if he's a mage, maybe give him lots of things he can do with his spells and stuff like that. Prue says, hey, RP buddies, love a surprise stream. Yes, me too. Fallen Syndicate. My friends got into a new pirate war game called Blood and Plunder, and we want to use it as combat for an RPG. What RPG system would work well with this? No idea. Not familiar with Blood and Plunder, but maybe look at something like 7th Sea or what are some other pirate games? I don't know. There's a Savage World pirate game, I'm pretty sure. Not super familiar with pirate stuff, so. Vampire Granny. Anyone know if Roll20 is worth it if I can't afford to buy anything? I haven't used Roll20 in a long time, so I'm not sure. Maybe someone in the chat can help you out. Oh, cool. I guessed your surname right on the second time. Awesome. Thomas Tibbetts. Have you ever played games with time travel? How would you handle a potential grandfather paradox? So I have played in games with time travel before. Obviously, Winds of Cerceline has a lot of time travel elements in it, but like physical time travel, like going back in time, I've seen work well. I've seen it work poorly. I would just, proceed with caution if you're planning on doing time travel stuff, because paradoxes will happen. Come up with a way for, maybe you want to do 2 different realities sort of thing. I don't know, man. Time travel is tough. I don't usually mess with that kind of stuff. People were convinced that the corruptor was dice from the future. People were just assumed that was the case. Okay, I'm going to actually scroll back up. There were a couple of really good questions at the very beginning of the stream that I missed, and I'm going to check a couple of those out. Sarah Kuna asks, second question, how do you plan or improv for items and things found when the party investigates somewhere you weren't expecting? Do you prep for things found on bodies that don't further the story? Yeah, so what I do for this is look for like a roll table. The 5th edition, I don't think I have it here, but the 5th edition DM screen has like a random like trinkets thing. The trinkets tables from 5th edition are perfect for this because they're all just like weird little things that you can find that may not necessarily be important, but they're still cool. So look at like trinkets tables, random loot, things like that. Just have something like that on hand at all times in case you need something really quick, just to roll to come up with, something they have on them. All right, let's see here. Thomas Tibbetts. I was one of those who thought the corruptor was dice. I think that's so funny. I don't know why people were so convinced of that. It's not like I ever hinted at it. I think it was just somebody mentioned it at one point and a bunch of people thought it was cool, like a cool idea. And so everyone kind of went along with it, which it's just funny. It's funny to me. Andrew Gloy, what's your favorite edition of D&D? So my favorite edition is probably 5th edition, honestly. The edition I played the most is 3rd and 3.5. I played 3rd, 3.5, and Pathfinder for like since 3rd edition came out, and I was one of the first guys on the Pathfinder bandwagon. But right now, 5th edition is where it's at, and I can honestly say that 5th edition is my favorite edition of the game. I feel like it's a perfect sort of blend of like the sort of old school mentality of like rules, like keeping it simple, DM fiat, player agency, things like that. With 5th edition, having a more modern sort of streamlined set of rules. So I really love 5th edition. I don't love everything about it. I don't think it's a perfect system, but for me, like it does exactly what I need it to do. And it came around at exactly the right time. I was getting super burned out on Pathfinder. I just had all these splat books and just like, it just was starting to bog me down a little bit. And I was looking for a new system, and that's right around when 5th edition came out. So it was awesome. Thomas Carpenter, what do you think about doing anime games? Ridiculous action, giant swords and monsters. What are some suggestions, maybe a system I should use? So I've never run an anime style game. I like a little bit more grit to my games, so I can't really get down with anime style stuff. But I would suggest like maybe checking out something like Fate. There's also an anime system I know that's called like OVA, I think it's called, but I've read the rules for that system and I actually don't love them. But Fate is great for stuff like that. Vampire Granny, awesome username. And he has Worf as a profile picture. That's awesome. I've always found it hard to make towns feel natural rather than just a map with visitable locations like the blacksmith, the town hall, etc. So I don't know if you're asking a question or if you're just saying that, but if you're asking how do I make towns feel more natural, focus on the characters, focus on the people that populate the town. You're never going to make a town feel more natural by just adding different locations. Just focus on the characters, fill the towns with, you know, a handful of interesting NPCs that want something, and it'll feel a little bit more natural. Cody just recommended the Fate system as well. Tanya Jackson, new DM, currently DMing prefab adventures 5e, but have only done short adventures. Do you have any recommendations for longer adventures? There are so many options from WotC and DriveThruRPG. So look at the D&D beginner box. The Lost Mines of Phandelver is great. Really, really awesome adventure that's very open-ended. It's very sandboxy. I really like Lost Mines of Phandelver. I would also recommend Storm King's Thunder is great. And also, WotC just released, I think it's out everywhere now. Actually, I think it might have come out today, maybe? Anyway, I'm behind on my releases, but Tales from the Yawning Portal has a bunch of awesome old dungeons that they updated with 5th edition mechanics. So maybe look at Tales from the Yawning Portal, because it has one of my very favorite adventure modules of all time, Sunless Citadel, in there. So I'm definitely planning on picking that up. Brew, do you still sometimes do Magic the Gathering card prep? Yes. After watching your vid on it a long time ago, I've used it to blow off steam and relax. Now I have like 100 weird little hooks and concepts, so thanks. Yes, I love Magic the Gathering card prep. That's just where I either buy a booster pack or I grab a handful of Magic cards and I just go through them and I look at the art, I look at the flavor text, and I prep a game just looking at the art. I have a video of it on my channel. You can go check it out. But yes, that's one of my favorite ways to prep. I love that. Batman Official. I want to have a race of automatons that have firearms and stuff to work as an extreme threat to keep people moving along if needed. How can I make sure that the players don't get their hands on them? If you don't want your players to have guns, then don't put guns in your campaign, because your players will get guns. That is, if you have an enemy holding a gun, shooting at the players, you know what the first thing your players are going to do after they defeat that enemy? They're going to grab the gun and they're going to start using it. So if you want to make it hard to get firearms, make it a certain type of proficiency that they need. So they wouldn't necessarily make sense for them to use a gun unless they somehow develop the proficiency to use them. So maybe they have to work at it. They have to train with it, whatever, make ammunition scarce, things like that. That's the best way you can do it. But guaranteed, if you put guns in your campaign, your players are going to pick them up and start using them. So just, if you don't want guns in their players' hands, don't put them in your world. Give us Edgeless. If you want a location to feel natural, think about what their needs are. Source of food, water, clothing, the mundane stuff that you don't give too much thought. Yeah, totally. That's a good way of doing it too, is thinking about the resources that are available to the town. Do they have fresh water nearby? Chances are yes, because you don't really build a town, not near water. Think about the crops, think about what they grow, what they make, things like that. What comes into the town from elsewhere? What are their relationships with the other towns? Just like simple things like that. Daniel Edens, what aspects of any of 5e mechanics do you change, or are there any you adopt from previous or alternate systems? The only thing that I do differently is inspiration stacks. So you don't just have one point of inspiration. You can have multiple points of inspiration. And also I like the lingering injuries table are the two sort of things that I do differently. I like 5th edition, but I wish it had something more to its skill points. That feels too slimmed down. See, I love proficiency bonus. I hate buying ranks and skills, and I like the idea that here's your proficiency bonus. It scales as you level. You're either proficient in a skill or you're not. I love that. And certain classes get expertise where you get double proficiency, which is just awesome. So proficiency bonus, I think, is one of the, that's genius game design right there. Okay, let me scroll forward. I'm really behind here. Charlie Wake, do you ever get anxiety before running a game? Yes. Especially with people you've never played with before online? Yes. How do you get over worrying about people's opinions of your DMing style or stories? So I actually did a big long stream in the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group, which there's a link down in the description if you want to join our Facebook group, about anxiety surrounding D&D and the game and stuff. And I don't want to go too in-depth into it, but just know that, yes, I get anxiety. I get anxiety before every game, no matter what, even if it's a Provokers game. And I've played with these guys so many times and they're my best friends. I still get anxiety. And it's because I'm excited. It's because I'm worried that the game will go poorly. It's because I want to do a good job. It's because I want everyone to have fun. And so there's so much going into it. The anxiety that you feel is because you care about the game and because you care about your group and you want everyone to have a good time. So the anxiety is coming from a good place. And so as much as you can, try and funnel that anxiety into something productive. You know, don't just sit and think about the game and over prep and question yourself and overthink things. Watch a movie, read a book, listen to some music, take a walk. Just try and work out that energy as best you can. And as soon as the game starts, as soon as you start narrating and as soon as your players start getting into it, that anxiety will just go away. So know that you're not alone. So many people feel anxiety before games and even during games, myself included. So, and I've been doing this for, you know, so many years. So let's see here. So many questions. Okay. What is your best tool for maintaining campaign material? Specifically, what tool do you use as a DM to keep up with the story development? And what tool do you use to develop the story? So, man, my notes are all over the place. Note cards, my DM notebook, Google Docs, like my note app on my phone. They're just all over the place. Recently, I've been using Trello, or is it Trello? Hang on, let me open it up here on my phone. Yeah, Trello, which is a it's like a bulletin board app, and it looks like this on my phone. Okay, so you can't really see too much of it, but basically, I have a few different categories. There's story, non-player characters, locations, encounters, and then a few random things. And basically everything is labeled and color-coded so that if it involves a certain character, it'll have a color on it, right? So each character in the campaign is a different color. And I can open them up, and it opens up to this bulleted list here. So I've really been into Trello lately because it is sort of like it works with my sort of note card fixation, but it's all in one place, and I can access it on my phone. I can access it on my computer. It's with me at all times. So try Trello. Trello's great. Okay, guys, we're getting into it here. So I'm going to answer a few more questions. I'm going to ban this guy. Okay, let's see here. Great live stream. Please do more. Awesome. Okay, Charlie Wake says, thanks, Matt. Very reassuring. Anxiety has put me off so many times in the past. I'm already part of the FB group, and I've always wanted to run stuff there. Just got to get over that hump. Great stream. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the thing is like we've all been there, man. And I personally, as a person, I get anxiety all the time, and I suffer from anxiety and about everything, you know, things that I like, things that I don't like. I get anxious about work. I get anxious about money. I get anxious, you know, who doesn't, right? But it's always disappointing when you're so anxious about something that you can't do it. And just knowing that you're not alone, that you're not the first person to get anxiety about D&D. And in fact, watch some of my games, watch the Provokers. Every single session I have anxiety. Okay. Every single session leading up to that session, I just get so nervous and worried. And I've come to relate that feeling to my love of the game, because I really do love this game. I love RPGs in general, and I love the people that I play with, and I just want everyone to have a good time and enjoy themselves. But don't forget that you are one of the people at the table that needs to have a good time. So just chill, take a breather, make sure that you take the time to do something with that energy, you know, take a walk, watch a movie. you'll be good to go. All right, I'm going to answer a couple more questions here, and then we're going to call it. Let's see here. Here's a good question. What surprised you most in your Provokers game? What surprised me the most in the Provokers game? How close I got with all of those guys, I think was the biggest thing. Is they were all people on YouTube that I watched and enjoyed and thought would be, would make for a good sort of party of characters. And I planned this one shot, and it ended up becoming a 17-session campaign and some of the best friends I've ever had in my entire life. And I founded a publishing company with a few of them. So that would be the biggest surprise in the Provokers game. But in the actual campaign itself, probably the biggest surprise to me was the moment when Dice had been melted by the dragon and he was dying, and Durgan turned and ran towards Dice to save him, knowing full well that he had like 2 HP left and he was going to take an opportunity attack from the dragon. There was a moment there where I thought Dice and Durgan were both going to die. And that was crazy. That was insane to me. And it made for probably my favorite moment in the entire campaign. Like, yes, the Corruptor fight was great. Like, I loved so much about that campaign, but that moment when Durgan and Tim selflessly sacrificed potentially their life to save their friend was, I feel like that was heroism. That was the greatest act of heroism I have ever seen in a D&D game. Okay. Let me see here. I'm going to pick one more question. Let's see here. Really great questions, guys. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me. We had like 100 people at one point. It's awesome. Oh, here's a great question. Tanya Jackson asks, I have playtested for 2 different authors. I'm assuming playtesting game design stuff. Do you have any recommendations for providing important feedback to them? I want them to know I value their work. Thank you again. This is an awesome question, and I'm neck deep right now in Harbinger playtest feedback. So Harbinger, dark science fantasy game that I'm running or building with 5th edition that we're currently playtesting. The best feedback you can give is experience-based feedback. Think about how the game feels to play. So many people, when they go into a playtest, want to be game designers. They want to say, this feature should happen here. This should do a D8 instead of a D6, blah, blah, blah. The best feedback you can give is, this feels good, this doesn't. Here's why. So for instance, we're getting a lot of feedback about the Treader class in Harbinger. The Treader is sort of our fighter ranger class. They're very martial based. They've got some cool fighter stuff. They got some cool ranger stuff. They're space rangers with energy weapons. They're really cool. But everyone's saying they need more survivability. And no one's saying, give them this or give them that or make them better at this. Everyone's saying, I feel like the Treader is too squishy. That to me tells me everything I need to know. So I know that, okay, either the Treader needs more hit points, they need a healing feature, or they need something else in between, right? And I can decide as the game designer what I want to do. When someone tells me this should happen here, I don't know why they're saying that. I don't know what has happened in their game that has made them say that. But if they say this needs to do more damage, or this doesn't feel powerful enough, or I would never take this because it doesn't feel like it benefits me, those sorts of actionable feedback is great. So come at it from the standpoint of a player, as a game master, somebody who's consuming the product rather than a game designer. That's the best advice I can give you if you're involved in playtesting of any kind. Cool. Okay, so guys, I'm going to go ahead and call it here. We've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes now. Thank you so much, everyone, for stopping by. This has been great. Like I said, I was wanting to do some videos earlier today, and I just couldn't get up the gumption to do some videos, so I decided to do a live stream instead. So thank you guys for dropping in. This is awesome. I will definitely do this more. Maybe I'll try to do it once a week, once every couple weeks. I'll hop on here, maybe around this time. This seems like it's a good time for people for an hour, 90 minutes, answer your questions. Maybe we'll roll up some characters, do some session prep, things like that. I enjoy these live streams. So thank you again, everybody. And I hope everyone's having a great day, and I hope everyone enjoys running the games that they're running this week and this weekend. So take care, everybody. Happy gaming all. May your pizzas be hot and ready. All that stuff. Peace.